Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching an overview of Active Directory Federation services. Now, this is going to be a short and to the point lesson where we're going to talk about exactly what is Active Directory Federation services. We'll look at the different role services that come with it. And then I'm going to jump right in, give you a brief demonstration on how to install Active Directory Federation services. So first of all, what is ADFS? Well, Active Directory Federation Services is an identity access solution that provides browser-based clients with seamless, one-prompt access to one or more protected internet-facing applications, even when the user accounts and applications are located in completely different networks or organizations. Now, I bet that definition probably was a little bit confusing. And the reason why is because that is something that I copied straight off of one of Microsoft's websites. So let me see if I can give a little bit of clarification here. In a previous lesson, we learned about trusts, and more specifically, we talked about forest trusts, where we had Globomantics and Wired Brain Coffee wanting to do business with one another, and in order to do so, users from each forest needed to access resources from the other forest. Now, in that previous lesson, I showed you how to set that up using forest trusts. But what I didn't tell you back then, and I'll tell you now, is that there are potential issues that come along with those typical forest trust relationships. So for instance, let's say that Globomantics and Wired Brain Coffee are not in the same physical location, right? They're not on the same physical network, and they need to be able to access each other's resources, very typically via the internet. Well, in that instance, what you would have to do is you'd have to open up all sorts of different firewall ports on each of the networks to allow Active Directory to communicate through the firewall. Another big problem that we have is you'll notice here it says seamless one-prompt access. Well, this is otherwise known as single sign-on. Okay, because see, here's the deal. When an application or resources is in one network and the user accounts are in another, it's typical that the users will encounter a prompt for what's called secondary credentials when they attempt to access the application or resource. Active Directory Federation Services makes those secondary credentials unnecessary by providing a federation trust relationship that you can use to project a user's digital identity and access rights to those trusted partners. Now, here's the thing. In a federated environment, each of the organizations will continue to manage its own identities, but each organization can also, again, securely project and accept from other organizations. Now, I mentioned about having to open up a bunch of ports. Well, another thing here is with Active Directory Federation Services, communication between the networks will take place via HTTPS, which means port 443 is the only port that needs to be open for the two networks to talk to one another. And this port is typically open anyway, just for simple web browsing. Now, there are 4 role services that make up ADFS. The first one is the Federation Service. Now, this is made up of one or more Federation servers that will share a common trust policy. You use these Federation servers to route authentication requests from user accounts in other organizations or from clients that may be located anywhere out on the internet. Okay, so just remember that the Federation service is what is used to route authentication requests. Now, the next one is the Federation Service Proxy. Now, this is a proxy to the Federation Service. Well, that sounds like a bunch of double talk, doesn't it? So really what this is, though, is it's a proxy that is in the perimeter network sometimes also known as either a DMZ, demilitarized zone, or a screened subnet. It's a protected network that's usually in between your internal network and the internet. And what the proxy does is it collects user credential information from the browser clients and sends those credentials to the Federation service on their behalf. Okay, so the Federation service proxy is just what it sounds like. If you want to have an added layer of protection, you can put a proxy out on a protected network while having your true Federation servers on the internal network. Now, the third role service is a claims-aware agent. You use this agent on a web server that will host what's known as a claims-aware application to allow the querying of Active Directory Federation Services security token claims. Now, a claims-aware application is an ASP.NET application that uses claims that are present in the ADFS security token to make authorization decisions and personalize applications. Now, I know that some of this is probably sounding a little like, huh? A little confusing. But like I said, in just a moment, we're going to go into the operating system and you'll see where this is all set up. Now, the fourth role service is the Windows token-based agent. You use this agent on a web server that hosts a Windows NT token-based application to support conversion from an Active Directory Federation Services security token to an impersonation level Windows NT access token. The Windows NT token-based application is an application that uses Windows-based authorization mechanisms. So really what it comes down to is an understanding here that ADFS can work with both Windows but with non-Windows applications as well. So what I'd like to do now is take us over to the operating system where I will show you how to install and set up a sample Active Directory Federation Services environment. All right, so here we are on our Windows 7 client in the Global Mantix network. And this will actually be one of 4 computers that are going to be needed for this demonstration. This computer, this Windows 7 computer, will act as our client. And then we're going to use New York DC1 and Seattle DC1 as our domain controllers for the Global Mantix and for the Wired Brain Coffee domains. And these will also be our Federation servers. And then we're going to use New York Mem1, which is a member server in the Global Mantix domain. We're going to use that as a web server where we're going to install a claims-aware application so that we can see how users will access these applications from one organization to the other. Now, there's a few things that we need to do to finish getting this demonstration set up. Okay, we already have all of these computers installed from previous lessons. But what we need to do is go into Seattle DC1 and we need to create a user over in that domain that's going to go ahead and access resources from Global Mantix. Okay, so I've created a remote desktop icon here on my desktop. So let's go ahead and connect to that now. Okay, here on Seattle DC1, I am going to just go into Active Directory, Users and Computers. We're not going to do anything super fancy here. We're going to keep this real simple. I'm going to go ahead and create in the users container. Okay, so I don't need to create any separate organizational units or anything like that. In a production environment, obviously, we would have different organizational units and users and groups set up appropriately. But this is the only user that we're going to set up in this network. So I'm going to just right-click on Users, select New User, and I'm going to put in Claims User. You could really name it anything you want. Okay, this is just a sample user, so I'll put C User. Go ahead and put in a password for this account. We don't need to change that password. Matter of fact, we'll even say it never expires. We'll just go ahead and let that password sit out there. Click Next and Finish. All right, so now you can see that we have our claims user account that we've just created. I'm going to right click on users again, select New, Group, and I'm going to go ahead and create a security global group. Okay, so that's the default here, security global group. We're going to call it Claim App Users. Click OK. You'll see we have Claim App Users. And then I'm going to go ahead and right click on Claims User. I'm going to say Add to Group. I'll put in the word Claim and check names. There's our Claim App Users. And the user has been added to that group. Okay, so just to simulate the environment, we've created a user, which pretty much represents what could be a group of users. And to do that, I went ahead and created a group and then made that user a member of the group. I'm going to go ahead and close out of Active Directory, and I'm going to go ahead and, you know what, I'll just minimize the session with Seattle DC1 because we're going to pop over to New York Member 1. Let me go ahead and connect there now. And here it's prompting me for my credentials, so I'll go ahead and put those in. Click OK. And the reason I'm connecting to New York Mem 1 is because we have to go ahead and install the web server role. Okay, we already have this computer as a member server. Now we need to make it a web server. So here on New York Member 1, I'm going to go into the Server Manager. Here in the Server Manager, I'm going to go ahead and you'll see roles is already highlighted. That's apparently where I last was. So I'll go ahead and click Add Roles. And I'm going to add the web server role. So I'll click Next. Just tells me what it's about to do. Next. I'm going to take all the default role services. Okay, there's nothing specific that I'm going to add. Go ahead and click Next and install. So this is just, what we're doing right now is just making it that this is just generically a web server. Okay, now like I said, the domain controller services have already been installed on Seattle DC1 and New York DC1, so we're okay there. The Windows 7 client, New York Client 1, is already a member of the Global Mantics domain, so we're okay there as well. So here you'll see the installation has succeeded, and we'll go ahead and click Close, and close out of the Server Manager. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to install the Federation service on our two domain controllers. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize New York Mem 1, and let's go ahead and connect to New York DC1. And here again, it's prompting us for our credentials, so I'll go ahead and put in the password, click OK. Now, the steps that I'm going to perform here on New York DC1 are going to also be performed exactly the same on Seattle DC1. Okay, so we need to do the same thing on both. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Server Manager. And then I'm going to go ahead and select Roles. Then I'm going to come over here and add a role. Here in the Select Server Roles, I'm going to go ahead and select Active Directory Federation Services, right? That's what we're trying to install right now. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Here's an overview of what ADFS is. I'm going to go ahead and click Next again. And now I need to select what role services that I need. And in this case, because this is going to be our Federation server, I need to select the Federation Service role service. And as you can see here, there's additional role services that are needed, so I'll go ahead and add those in as well. Click Next. Now, one of the things that you need to know is that in order to use Active Directory Federation Services, you need a certificate. Okay, so depending on the specific scenario that you're in, you very well may want to go out and get a third-party certificate so that customers out on the internet, if that's who you're dealing with, can go ahead and trust this certificate, or possibly even another partner. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and create a self-signed certificate. Okay, and you're going to see that in a little bit. There's an extra step we're going to have to go through when using the self-signed certificate. And quite frankly, this is something you can do if you are working with a partner organization. You don't have to get that trusted third-party certificate. If the two organizations work closely enough together, then you could do this. Okay, but for demonstration purposes, we're going to do a self-signed certificate. I'm going to click Next. Now here we need another type of certificate called the token signing certificate. And again, everything I just said about the server authentication certificate, well, we need to go ahead and do a self-signed certificate. Okay, we're not going to go out and grab a certificate for any of this. Click Next. Now here we need to go ahead and either select an existing trust policy, which there is no existing trust policy, or create a new one. So I'm just going to take the default location and say I want to create a new one and click Next. And then here is just a basic introduction into the IIS stuff that it's going to add, because we said there were some required additional services, and that's what these are. So I'll click Next again. We're just going to take the default role services because, again, Microsoft is really good about saying, well, this is what you need, so we're going to go ahead and put that in here. Click Next. And here's a confirmation of everything that we're about to do. Just click Install, and we're on our way. So I'll tell you what, while that installs, let's go ahead and minimize New York DC1 and connect back with Seattle DC1. Go into the server manager and do the exact same thing. So here in the server manager for Seattle DC1, we're going to go ahead and add roles. Active Directory Federation Services. Next. Next. We're going to do the Federation service. Add the required role services. Next. Create our self-signed certificates. Create a new trust policy, and basically just click Next a bunch of times and install. All right, well, while that's installing, let's go ahead and jump back over to New York DC1 and see where it's at. Okay, it looks like New York DC1 is almost finished. Okay, well, here we go. Everything has completed, so we can see it says installation has succeeded. So we have that all the way down. We'll click Close. And then we'll go ahead and close out of the server manager. Now we're going to come over here to Start, Administrative Tools. And we're going to go into the IIS Manager. Okay, because what we're going to do now is we're going to configure IIS to require SSL. Okay, because that's something that we have to do if we're going to go ahead and use Active Directory Federation Services. All right, so here in the IIS Manager, we're going to go ahead and expand New York DC1. And then we're going to expand sites. We're going to click on the default website. Over here, on the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and double-click on SSL settings. And then we're going to choose to require SSL. And then under client certificates, we're going to accept those client certificates. Come over here and click Apply. And it says the changes have been successfully saved. So I'll tell you what, before we go any further, let me go ahead and minimize this. And let's jump over to Seattle DC1, where we can see that everything has finished installing. We're going to close this, close out of Server Manager. Again, come over here to the IIS Manager. Okay, I just want to show you we're doing everything the same on both of these servers. So we expand Seattle DC1, expand sites, click on default website, SSL settings, require SSL, and accept. Apply. Changes have been successfully saved. So now we've installed Federation services on both of our domain controllers. This one, Seattle DC1, which is the account side of things, and New York DC1, which is the resource side of things. Now what we need to do is go ahead and leave Seattle DC1 and jump over to New York Mem1, because on here we're going to install the Active Directory Federation Services web agent. So let's go into the server manager. And then in here we're going to go ahead and add a role. And we're going to add Active Directory Federation Services. Click Next, Next again. And here we're going to install the Claims Aware agent. And again, it's going to tell us we have some required role services. Now, you'll notice these are some additional web server services. And we could have done this when installing the web server, but I just wanted to show you that once again, if you don't have a certain component that's needed, Microsoft will add it for you. So let's just go ahead and add the required role services. Click Next, 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 and Install. Okay, so just kind of a process of going through and taking all the defaults because Microsoft sets this up appropriately for us. Okay, and we've seen this throughout this entire course where you'll go to install a certain role or role service and there's some other service that's required. Well, when that service is required, Microsoft will tell you that and install it for you. So here you can see that installation was successful. So let's close out of here. And we can actually close out of the server manager. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and create a self-signed certificate for this web server. So I'll click on Start, Administrative Tools, IIS. I'm going to go ahead and click on the server itself and come down here to Server Certificates. Double click on that. And then again, create a self-signed certificate. Now again, remember, in a production environment, very often you might be using an internal certification authority to create these different certificates, or you might use a third-party certification authority to create these certificates. But since we're just demonstrating an example of setting this up, we're doing everything with a self-signed certificate. So we need to give a friendly name for the certificate. So why don't we call it what it really is, New York Mem1 2K8, right? It's a server certificate, and that's the name of the server. So I'll click OK. And there we go. We now have our self-signed server authentication certificate. Now we need to go ahead and export our certificates from our two Federation servers. So let's go ahead and go away from New York Mem1, pop back over to Seattle DC1. We don't need the IIS manager anymore, so we're going to go ahead and close that. And we're going to go into Administrative Tools, Active Directory Federation Services. In Active Directory Federation Services, we're going to go ahead and right-click on Federation Service and go to the Properties. On the General tab, we're going to go ahead and view the token signing certificate. Okay, we need to do this on the account side of things. That's why we're on Seattle DC1. So we're going to view that certificate. On the Details tab, you'll see here we can copy it to a file. This is how we export it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy to a file. Here's a little wizard on exporting the certificate. So click Next. Say, no, we don't need to export the private key. You'll see that's the only option here. So we'll just click Next. We'll take the default X.509 certificate. Next. And then we need to give it a name and a location. So let's go ahead and browse. And let's just go right to the root of the C drive. And let's call this Seattle DC1 2K8, right? That's the name of the server, _ TS for token certificate. And click Save. And then click Next. Finish. The export was successful. Click OK, OK, and OK. And we can close out of this utility. And just to verify that it's there, I'm going to go ahead and go into my computer here. C drive. There it is. There's my certificate file. So I've successfully exported it. Next, we need to jump over to New York DC1. So here we have New York DC1. And here in the IIS Manager, we're going to go ahead and click on the server. and then go into server certificates. So we're going to double click that. Here we'll see there's certificates that have already been created. This was done as part of the original installation of Federation Services. Here is New York DC1.globalmantics.local. This is the server authentication certificate for this server. So we highlight this and then come over here and click export. And then where do we want to export it to? Well, let's hit these three little dots here so we can pick where we want to go to. We can go to our C drive. And let's just go ahead and call this New York DC1 2K8 and click open. Okay, so that's what it's going to call. It's going to just call it New York DC1 2K8.pfx. That's the extension on the server authentication certificate that we're sending out to a file. We need to go ahead and put a password on this just to secure it. So go ahead and enter the same password twice. You can really put anything you want here. And click OK. And then if we close out of this utility, go to our computer, go to the C drive. There we can see the New York DC1 2K8 PFX file. It has been exported. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and import that certificate from New York DC1 over to New York Mem1, our web server. So let's switch over to that computer now. So we're going to go over to New York Mem1. And we don't need the IIS manager here, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to click Start, type MMC. Now this will open up a custom MMC. Click on File, Add Remove Snap-in, and we want to add the snap-in for certificates. So we're going to add that for a computer account, specifically the local computer account. Finish, click OK. Okay, so this is just how I can manage certificates on this server. If I expand certificates, and then, you know what, let's go ahead and move this over a little bit so we can see what we're looking at here. We want to go to Trusted Root Certification Authorities, so let's expand that, and then click on Certificates. Okay, here are all the certificates that are on this computer. What we want to do is right-click, go to All Tasks, and Import. And here we get the certificate import wizard. So we'll go ahead and click Next. Where do we want to import it from? Now we could browse the network, but I know where it's located. So I'm just going to put in / New York DC1 2K8 / C $, which is a hidden administrative share, which points to the root of the C drive on New York DC1. Now we could have put this certificate that we had exported in a shared folder, but we really didn't have sharing set up on any folders on New York DC1. So we'll just do it right at the root of the C drive and put in / and put in NY DC1 2K8.pfx, right? Because that was the file that we saved it as. So we'll go ahead and click Next. And hopefully, if I typed it in correctly, it'll take us to the password screen, right? It recognizes the file, and now it wants our password. So we'll go ahead and type in our password. Click Next. We want to place the certificates in the Trusted Root Certification Authorities store, right? That's where we're located here. Click Next and Finish, and the import was successful. And you'll see here that New York DC1, that server, let me go ahead and move over. That server authentication certificate is also now on the New York Mem1 web server. So that is pretty much what we need to do to set up or really get the Active Directory Federation Services installed. Now we need to go configure some stuff. So let's go ahead and close this console. We don't need to save changes. This was just a temporary console that we created so we can manage these certificates. So we'll say no, we don't need to save changes. And then let's go ahead and go back to our IIS manager. Here in the IIS manager, we're going to expand New York Mem1, expand sites, and then here we're going to click on the default website. Over in the Actions pane over here, we're going to go ahead and click on Bindings, and then we're going to add an HTTPS binding, and then under the SSL certificate, we're going to go ahead and put in New York Mem1 2K8. and click OK and close. Now the next thing we need to do is over here under SSL settings, we are going to again require SSL and accept client certificates and apply. Same thing that we had done on our 2 federation servers. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up in thinking about all the details about what we're doing, because this is not a course designed to teach you how to configure web servers. Okay, we have that, but that's not what we're trying to do here. Okay, this is just a matter of going through the steps to show you how it would be done. But I will tell you that very often in a production environment, you might have different administrators involved who have specializations in the different areas, like maybe a web administrator who would be doing some of this stuff. Okay, so if you're feeling at all kind of frustrated with the, well, yeah, I can follow the steps, but I don't really know what I'm doing, that's okay. Okay, what I'm telling you is the high level of we are just getting the web server set up here. Okay. So we've gone ahead and set this default website up to use SSL, and then we set up to require SSL also. Now we need to go ahead and create and configure a claims-aware application. So if we come back over here and just click on the default website, we're going to right-click and select to add an application. In here, we're just going to go ahead and call this Claim App. Then we're going to come over here and click Select, and we're going to use a classic .NET app pool. Click OK. Then we need to come down here and click the 3 dots, and we need to go to our C drive. Scroll down here, expand inetpub, highlight the www root folder. And then we're going to make a new folder inside of www root. Okay, so www root is the default location. We're going to create a subfolder inside of there. So make a new folder. And we're going to go ahead and call this folder Claim App. Click OK. And OK again. So what we did was we just created a new application called Claim App inside our default website. And we pointed it to a folder inside of www root. So let's go ahead and close out of IIS. And this is where these 3 files are going to come into play. What I'm going to do is go ahead and go into my computer here. And on the C drive, under inetpub, www root, here we'll see Claim App. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to make that just one window over here. And then here I have those 3 files. I'm going to go ahead and take those 3 files and I'm going to move them over to that folder. These files, and I'm not going to get into a whole lesson about what these files mean or how they work, but these files are what makes the actual application. Okay, that's what you need these files for. So we'll go ahead and close that. And now the web server is ready. So now we need to go over and configure federation services over on our federation servers. So let's put away New York Member 1 for just a moment. And let's jump over to the account side of things. So we're going to go to Seattle DC1. In here, we're going to go ahead and pop back over to Active Directory Federation Services. We're going to go ahead and expand Federation Services. Click on Trust Policy, which you'll see we don't have one yet. So I'm going to right click and go to Properties. And down here where it says Federation Services URI, right here, we're going to go ahead and type in URN : Federation : Wired Brain Coffee. And you'll notice that down here in the Federation Services endpoint URL, you'll see that we have https Seattle dc1.wiredbraincoffee.local /adfs/ls Okay, and that's what you want to see. Okay, that's exactly what we want to see. Now we want to go to the display name tab. Let's go ahead and change this name and let's just call it Wired Brain Coffee. And then click OK. Okay, so now we've configured that trust policy. So now we need to create what's called a group claim for the claims aware application. So here in Federation Services, we're going to expand the trust policy, expand my organization, and then here where it says organization claims, we're going to go ahead and right click and select new organization claim. So over here in the claim name, we're going to call this Globomantics Claim App Claim. And click OK. Okay, now we need to go ahead and add and configure an Active Directory Directory Services account store. So over here under Account Stores, we want to go ahead and right click, select New Account Store. Get a little wizard here. Go ahead and click Next. And we want to use Active Directory Domain Services. You'll notice here we could use Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, which is something that could be set up if we were doing this and we didn't have ADDS in place. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and use ADDS because that is what we have here. Click Next. And then, of course, we want to enable the account store. So I'll click Next and Finish. So now we need to go ahead and map a global group to the group claim for the claims aware application. So what we're going to do is over here, again, in our trust policy under my organization, under account stores, here we have Active Directory. We're going to go ahead and right click, select New, and select Group Claim Extraction. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and click Add. And I'm just going to put in claim, check names. And here's our claim app users. That's the one that we want, right? That's the global group that we had created at the beginning of this demonstration. Go ahead and click OK. And we want to go ahead and make sure to map this to the Globomantics claim app claim. So I'll click OK. And now we need to go ahead and configure the other side of things. We need to go ahead and configure the resource side of things. So let's go ahead and leave Seattle 1 for a moment here. And we'll jump over to New York DC 1, okay, which is our Federation server on the resource side. By the way, just to be clear, so you understand the difference between the account side and the resource side, we're talking about accounts over in Wired Brain Coffee accessing the application or the resource over in Globomantics. Okay, that's why I'm referring to the account side and the resource side. So over here on New York DC1, we're going to go into our administrative tools and Active Directory Federation Services. And of course over here on Federation Services, we're going to go ahead and expand that. And then here we have our trust policy. So we're going to right click and go to its properties. Once again, right here, we're going to go ahead and change this to say URN:/Federation:/Globomantics. Again, verifying down here that we have HTTPS NewYorkDC1.globomantics.local ADFS ls. Want to come up here to the display name and go ahead and change this display name to just say Globomantics. Click OK. And now we need to create a group claim for the claims aware application. So we'll go ahead and expand the trust policy. Expand my organization. Right click organization claims, new organization claim. So here we're going to go ahead and type in Wired Brain Coffee claim app claim. Again, group claim. Click OK. We then need to go ahead and add the Active Directory Directory Services account store. So we'll come over here to Account Stores, right click, New Account Store. Next. Again, we want ADDS. Next. We want it to be enabled. Next, and finish. Now we need to add the claims-aware application. So over here, we're going to go ahead and right-click Applications, New Application. Here we get a wizard. Go ahead and click Next. Okay, you'll notice this is a little bit different now because now we're on the resource side. So we want to go ahead and make sure to select Claims-Aware Application. Next. For the display name, let's just go ahead and call it a Claims-Aware Application. For the application URL, let's go ahead and put in New York mem1 2k8 .globomantics.local / claim app. Okay, /. This is what we had created on New York mem1 when we configured the web server. Okay, this is the URL. And go ahead and click Next. And we're going to go ahead and say that this accepts what's called user principal names. Next. We want to make sure to enable this application. Next, and finish. So now that Federation Services recognizes the application, we need to go ahead and enable the Globomantics Claim App Claim Group for this application. So, under the Applications folder, here we have Claims Aware Application. And over here, you'll see here's the Wired Brain Coffee Claim App Claim. So we want to go ahead and right-click on that and select Enable to go ahead and enable it. So now we've pretty much configured everything that we need there as far as the trust policies on either side. So now we need to create both sides of the federated trust using import and export functionality. So what we're basically doing here is we're creating a federated trust. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop back over to Seattle DC1. So let's minimize this. Come over here to Seattle DC1. And what we want to do is over here on the trust policy, we want to right click and export a basic partner policy. And then we're going to go ahead and browse. And once again, at the root of the C drive, we're going to go ahead and put in Seattle DC1 2K8, right? Just go ahead and put in the name of the server and click Save. Okay. I don't know if you saw, but it's saving it as an XML document. So I'll click OK. And so now let's go ahead and pop back over to New York DC1 and import it. So over here, you'll see we have partner organizations. Okay, so we'll expand that. And then we have account partners where we're going to right click and select new account partner. Get another wizard, click next. Here we have the import policy file. So we want to say yes, we want to import. And we're going to put in / Seattle DC1 2K8 / C $. Again, that's that hidden administrative share, which points to the root of the C drive on that particular computer. / Seattle DC1 2K8.xml. And then click Next. So we just want to verify here that the display name is Wired Brain Coffee. Here we have URN Federation Wired Brain Coffee. And down here we have HTTPS / Seattle DC1 wirebraincoffee.local ADFS LS. All right, so that is all correct, meaning this tells us that it actually found that file and it saw it because that's where it's getting it all from. Click Next. We're going to go ahead and use the verification certificate in the import policy file. Click Next. We want to use a federated web SSO. Okay, we're not using a Forest Trust. We're just using the web. SSO, by the way, stands for single sign-on. So we'll click Next. Just go ahead and take the defaults on UPN and email claim. Next. Now here, on the accepted user principal name suffixes, we want to go ahead and make sure to put in wiredbraincoffee.local and add that in. Let's go ahead and click next. Now here for the accepted email suffixes, we want to once again put in wiredbraincoffee.local. Add that in. Go ahead and click next. We want to enable this account partner. Click next and finish. So here we want to go ahead and create a claim mapping next. So here you'll notice that under partner organizations, account partners, we now have Wired Brain Coffee. Okay, so we're going to right click, new, incoming group claim mapping. And we're just going to go ahead and put in claim app mapping, right? Because that's what it is. And for the organization group claim, we want to make sure that it's Wired Brain Coffee claim app claim. Okay, you see that's the only one we can select anyway. Click OK. And then we need to export this so that we can then import it on the other side. So we want to come over here and right click on Wired Brain Coffee and select export this policy. And then we're going to browse. And then we want to make sure to go to the root of the C drive and just put in New York DC1 2K8. Okay, again, it's an XML document. Here we have C drive, New York DC1 XML. And click OK. And then after we export, what do we have to do? That's right, we have to import. So let's go ahead and leave New York DC1, pop back over to Seattle DC1. And then here we're going to do a similar thing under partner organizations. Here we have resource partners. Okay, that's the one thing that's different. Over on the other side, we created an account partner. But because we are on the account side, we want to now create a resource partner. So we're going to right click, new, resource partner. Here's our wizard. Go ahead and click next. Say yes, we want to go ahead and import the policy file. Put in double backslash New York DC1 2K8 backslash C $ backslash New York DC1 2K8.xml. Okay, we're just importing the file we just saved. Click next. Again, you want to verify that everything came in correctly, which it looks like it did. Go ahead and click next. Here we want to once again make sure Federated Web SSO is selected. Next. Go ahead and use UPN and email claims. Next. Now here with the select UPN suffix, we're going to go ahead and replace all UPN suffixes with the following. And it says wiredbraincoffee.local. And that's correct. That's what we want. So go ahead and click next. And we get the same thing on the email suffixes. So we'll go ahead and click next again. Here on the map claim transformation page, under mapping, we want to go ahead and make sure to select the claim app mapping. It's a group claim. Click next. We want to enable this resource partner and finish. And we have now successfully configured Federation services, and we've created all the account partnerships, resource partnerships. Basically, what we've done, we've created a Federation trust. All right, so now that we've set everything up, I just quickly wanted to share with you a supporting resource. Here's a TechNet article that will tell you pretty much anything and everything you need to know about ADFS. Okay, and as we've seen before, this article will then have links to other articles that will walk you through information. And matter of fact, they even have a link here to a step-by-step setup procedure similar to the one we just did here. And that brings us pretty much to the end of this lesson, where we learned exactly what ADFS is. And it's something that is used to create a separate type of trust between two organizations or an organization and outside customers. And the one big difference is that instead of having a forest trust relationship where we have to have a bunch of ports open on our firewall, a federation trust is all done through HTTPS, so we only have to have the one port open. And then also, this allows for a single sign-on so that users don't have to enter in any additional credentials. We saw that there were different role services involved with Active Directory Federation services, and then I walked you through how to install ADFS. And here's what I want to tell you. You've probably noticed a couple things. One, you probably felt a little bit lost. And again, that's because there is more to know that is kind of outside the realm of just being an Active Directory administrator. Okay, so there's other knowledge that would go along with this. And in some cases, some people say that learning all about Federation services could possibly be a course in itself because there are so many different components from so many different areas of networking. Not only is there the Active Directory side, but there's the web server side, there's networking side, there's all sorts of stuff you need to know. But the second thing is, you probably noticed that, boy, this is a heck of a lot more work than what we did when we set up the Forest Trust. Well, yes, that's true. There is more work, but the end result is better for the users involved, and you end up in a more secure environment. All right, well, that is pretty much all I have for you in this lesson. So that takes us to the end of this course as well, but I have a couple more lessons that follow where we talk about certification and where you go from here. So I hope you will take a moment to watch those lessons.